The restaurant was dimly lit, with soft golden lights casting gentle shadows on the wooden tables. The clinking of cutlery mixed with quiet chatter, creating a warm, familiar atmosphere that regulars loved. In one corner of the room, a small piano sat against the wall, its polished surface catching the glow from the nearby lamp. She had always loved the piano. Even in moments of exhaustion after long shifts, she found solace in the keys. Tonight, like many nights before, she sat on the bench, fingers poised above the keys, and played softly, letting the music flow naturally. Her life had never been easy. Every day was a struggle between work, bills, and trying to keep her small dreams alive. Playing piano was not just a hobby. It was a part of her identity, the one thing that made her feel free. The restaurant allowed her to play while waiting tables, a rare combination that let her survive and still touch the music she loved. Some nights were quiet, with only a few diners listening. Other nights, the place was buzzing with people talking, laughing, and celebrating. But no matter the crowd, she played from her heart, hoping that somewhere someone would notice. This night felt different. She sensed it before she even saw him. The moment the door opened, a different energy swept through the room. It was subtle at first, just a slight shift in the air, a hush over a corner table. Then she saw him. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit, moving with a confidence that made heads turn. Everyone seemed to pause for a moment, their conversations slowing as he walked to a table by the window. There was an aura about him that drew attention effortlessly, a presence that was impossible to ignore. She felt a shiver of unease but also a strange curiosity. She tried to focus on her playing, letting her fingers dance over the keys. Soft notes floated through the restaurant, creating a calm undercurrent beneath the murmurs of the diners. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her. When she glanced up briefly, she noticed him watching her. His gaze was steady, almost intense, like he was analyzing every movement, every note she played. Her heart skipped a beat. She had played for many people before, but there was something different about this man. He wasn't just listening. He was waiting for something, though she wasn't sure what. As the night went on, the restaurant continued its usual rhythm. Orders were taken, plates were served, and the low hum of conversation filled the space. She played song after song, each one carrying a piece of herself into the room. The guests seemed content, but the man at the window stayed focused on her. Finally, when a moment of quiet arrived, he stood and approached. She froze, unsure if she should continue playing or stop. There was a polite hesitation in his steps, but his presence was commanding. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but carrying authority. "Do you mind playing something for me? Something special?" She swallowed nervously. This was not unusual in itself. People often requested songs, but there was a certain intensity in his tone that made her uneasy. "Of course," she replied, her voice slightly shaky. She tried to smile, hoping to mask the flutter of nerves in her chest. He nodded once and returned to his seat, his eyes never leaving her. She took a deep breath and started playing a familiar tune, one she had practiced countless times. It was soft, melodic, and comforting. But as the notes filled the room, she noticed his expression shift. The polite interest faded, replaced by a sort of impatience. He leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table, and tilted his head as if waiting for something more. She faltered for a moment, unsure how to respond. She had always played for herself first and the audience second. This was different. The expectation pressed down on her, heavy and unfamiliar. Minutes passed and she tried several songs, each one met with a polite nod but still lacking approval. She felt her confidence wobble, the familiar comfort of the piano slipping under the weight of his gaze. Her hands shook slightly, but she forced herself to continue. She reminded herself that she had faced challenges before, that she had persevered through late nights, long shifts, and moments when she felt unseen. This was just another test, another challenge she had to meet. The restaurant staff began to notice the tension. Servers exchanged glances, unsure how to act. Some regulars whispered quietly, sensing the unusual focus on the small piano corner. The ambience, usually warm and relaxed, had shifted subtly. Yet she did not stop. She played through the uncertainty, her music becoming a shield, a way to maintain control over her own nerves. She imagined herself somewhere else, in a quiet room with only her piano, letting the music guide her. The world beyond the keys became distant, though the man's gaze remained a fixed point in the room. As she continued, she felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. Fear because of the intensity of the attention, the pressure to perform perfectly, and the uncertainty of what he expected. Exhilaration because she realized that this was an opportunity, however unexpected, to show her skill, her passion, her very soul through the piano. Her fingers moved faster, more confidently, finding patterns and melodies that flowed naturally. The music began to fill the entire space, touching not just the man at the table but everyone around her. She could see heads turning, ears straining to catch every note, as if the restaurant itself had grown silent to listen. Finally, he spoke again, breaking the spell of the music. "Play something that will stay in the room long after the last note," he said, his tone commanding yet strangely encouraging. She paused for a moment, processing the words. It was a challenge unlike any she had faced before. But deep inside, a spark ignited. She knew she could rise to the moment. She had played through self-doubt countless times, and now she had to do it again, for herself and for this intense audience. She straightened, her hands hovering above the keys, heart pounding, mind racing. Then she began a song from memory, one she had composed herself in quiet moments, pouring her emotions into the melody. The first few notes were tentative, testing the space, but soon the music found its flow. Every key spoke of her struggles, her dreams, her hopes, and her fears. The room seemed to respond, the air vibrating with the depth of her music. Diners who had been chatting fell silent, and even the kitchen staff paused in their tasks, drawn in by the unexpected beauty filling the restaurant. Her performance became a dialogue between her heart and the audience, each note telling a story of determination, resilience, and quiet strength. The man at the table, the billionaire who had unknowingly created this high-pressure stage, leaned back, a look of surprise crossing his face. He was used to commanding attention, controlling outcomes, yet here he was, a spectator to raw talent and emotion that no amount of wealth or influence could manufacture. For the first time, she felt a sense of control in the room, her music setting the tone, dictating the pace, and capturing the attention of everyone present. By the time she finished, the room was enveloped in a profound silence. No one moved immediately, no one spoke. It was as if the music had created a bubble of stillness, a pause in time that allowed everyone to breathe in the experience. She lowered her hands from the keys, slowly, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. The man at the table remained silent for a moment longer, then finally nodded, a faint smile appearing. It was not just approval. It was acknowledgement, respect, and perhaps a hint of admiration. She exhaled deeply, her chest rising and falling with the release of tension. For the first time that evening, she allowed herself a quiet smile, knowing she had met the challenge in her own way. The other diners began to murmur softly, sharing glances and quietly expressing their appreciation. The staff, relieved, continued their work, but the atmosphere had changed. The restaurant felt alive with the memory of her music. As the man stood to leave, he paused, giving her a final nod of recognition. She watched him go, feeling a strange mix of relief, pride, and curiosity about what might come next. For now, she returned to her usual routine, playing softer background melodies, but she carried with her the memory of the moment when her music had commanded the attention of an entire room. It was a night that reminded her why she loved the piano and why, despite all challenges, she would continue to play, always reaching for the music within her heart. The rest of the night passed with a gentle rhythm, but something had shifted. She no longer played just for the comfort of background music. She played knowing the power her music held, the way it could captivate, move, and even challenge those who listened. And though she did not yet know the full story of the man who had set this unusual stage, she knew that this encounter would stay with her forever, a turning point in her journey as a pianist, and perhaps in her life itself. The next day, the restaurant was buzzing with stories of the previous night. People whispered about the performance, about the way the music had silenced the room, and about the man who had seemed so captivated. The waitress arrived early, carrying her apron and the usual weight of daily responsibilities. But a small spark of confidence lingered from the night before. She still felt the echo of her performance in her chest, a reminder that she could command attention through music. Yet, a quiet nervousness remained. The encounter with the billionaire had left her with a mix of pride and uncertainty. As she moved through the restaurant, greeting coworkers and checking tables, she noticed the staff sharing glances and hushed conversations. Some smiled knowingly at her, while others avoided eye contact, unsure how to approach the situation. She tried to focus on her work, pouring coffee, taking orders and clearing tables, but her mind kept drifting back to the piano and to the intense gaze of the man who had demanded so much from her. It was strange, the feeling of being noticed and tested all at once. She had played for audiences before, but never under such pressure, never with such weight on her shoulders. That afternoon, the restaurant received a call from a private assistant requesting the waitress's presence for a special engagement. At first, she hesitated, unsure if this was legitimate. But the details were clear and direct. A private event, a chance to perform for a select audience, and an opportunity to showcase her talent. Her heart raced. She had always dreamed of performing for larger audiences. But this was different. There was a formal air to the invitation, and the implication that the man had been impressed the night before made it impossible to ignore. She spent the rest of her shift in a haze of nerves and anticipation. Colleagues offered encouragement, reminding her of her talent and the power she had shown through her music. Still, self-doubt lingered. She had always played for herself and for those who appreciated quiet background music. The idea of performing under such scrutiny was daunting. What if she faltered? What if her music didn't live up to expectations? Yet, beneath the fear, a growing determination began to take root. She had survived the pressure of the previous night, and she would do so again. When the evening came, she arrived at the private venue, a beautifully decorated space that exuded luxury and refinement. The piano was positioned at the center, surrounded by soft lighting and elegant furniture. She took a moment to breathe, absorbing the atmosphere and steadying her hands. The audience would be small, yet discerning, and the weight of their attention was tangible. The billionaire arrived shortly after, his presence calm yet commanding. He greeted her with a nod, acknowledging her arrival and subtly reminding her of the high stakes. As she began to play, the initial notes were gentle, exploratory. She tested the room, feeling the reactions of the audience, adjusting the flow and tempo to match the mood. The billionaire watched closely, his eyes focused, assessing every movement and expression. Her nerves remained, but she began to find her rhythm, letting the music carry her, allowing herself to respond to the energy around her. Each note became a bridge between her emotions and the listeners, weaving a connection that transcended words. Despite the initial tension, she felt herself growing more confident. Memories of years spent practicing alone in her small apartment came flooding back. The countless nights she had devoted to perfecting her technique, the sacrifices she had made to pursue her passion, and the moments of triumph and failure that had shaped her into the musician she had become. This recollection grounded her, reminding her that she had the skill and resilience to rise to the occasion. She let her fingers glide over the keys with increasing fluidity, blending technical precision with emotional depth. The billionaire remained attentive, yet there was a subtle shift in his demeanor. Where there had been impatience before, now there was a hint of appreciation. He seemed to sense the effort and authenticity behind her music, recognizing the blend of vulnerability and strength that defined her performance. Other guests, too, were visibly affected. Some closed their eyes, absorbed in the melody, while others leaned forward, captivated by the intricate interplay of notes. The atmosphere in the room transformed from formal expectation to shared experience, as if the music had created a space that belonged entirely to the performance. she moved into a more complex piece, one she had composed herself. This song carried deeper emotions, reflecting both her struggles and her aspirations. The piano became an extension of herself, each chord resonating with a story she had never spoken aloud. The audience responded intuitively, drawn into the narrative woven by her hands. The intensity of the moment was palpable. Even the staff present seemed to hold their breath, sensing the significance of what was unfolding. Midway through, a sudden wave of doubt crept in. She felt the weight of expectation pressing down, threatening to disrupt the flow she had carefully cultivated. Her hands faltered for a split second, and her heart skipped. But she caught herself, reminding herself of the strength she had found in her music before. She took a steadying breath and continued, allowing the emotion to guide her rather than fear. The notes flowed seamlessly again, and with each measure, her confidence solidified, creating a momentum that carried her through the rest of the piece. By the end of the performance, the room was fully immersed in the silence that followed the final note. It was not just the absence of sound, but a presence, a collective recognition of the skill, courage, and heart that had produced the music. She lowered her hands, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The billionaire stood and approached, offering a nod and a small smile of approval. It was subtle, yet it carried a depth of acknowledgement that transcended words. For her, it was validation, not just of her talent but of her ability to meet the challenges imposed by circumstances beyond her control. Afterward, she received quiet congratulations from the other guests, each expressing admiration for the performance in their own way. There were questions about her training, her inspiration, and her journey, all of which she answered modestly, highlighting her dedication rather than seeking personal acclaim. The atmosphere, once tense with expectation, had softened into one of respect and shared appreciation. She felt a quiet pride, not from the attention itself, but from having held her own in the face of pressure, staying true to her music and her vision. The billionaire lingered briefly, making a few subtle comments about potential opportunities and future performances. He spoke with a calm authority, offering suggestions without being overbearing, and recognizing her autonomy in choosing her path. She listened carefully, absorbing the information while maintaining her composure. It was a moment of clarity, realizing that influence and power did not have to diminish her agency. Rather, they could serve as a platform for growth if navigated wisely. As the evening drew to a close, she packed her sheet music and prepared to leave, carrying with her a renewed sense of purpose. The experience had challenged her in ways she had not anticipated, yet it had also affirmed her resilience and the power of her talent. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the late nights, the sacrifices, the quiet moments of practice, and the unwavering commitment to her art. Each step had led to this moment, and she felt gratitude for the lessons embedded in every challenge. Walking home, she allowed herself a quiet smile. She had faced pressure, expectation, and uncertainty, yet she had emerged with her music intact and her confidence strengthened. The encounter with the billionaire had been unexpected, even intimidating, but it had revealed something essential: her ability to connect with others through her talent, to convey emotion, and to inspire admiration without compromising herself. It was a reminder that even in the face of external demands, authenticity and dedication could shine through. She thought about the future, considering the possibilities that might arise from this experience. Invitations to perform, opportunities to collaborate, and the chance to reach wider audiences all seemed within reach. Yet, she understood that each step forward would require careful judgment, perseverance, and a continued commitment to her craft. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to navigate it with confidence and determination. Returning to her small apartment, she sat at her own piano, reflecting on the day's events. The keys were familiar and comforting, a space where she could experiment, make mistakes, and explore the full range of her abilities. She played quietly, not for an audience, not for validation, but for herself. The music flowed freely, carrying the experiences of the day, the triumphs and anxieties, and the quiet pride of having faced a challenge and succeeded. In that moment, She understood that her journey as a pianist was far from over, but she had taken a significant step forward, one that would shape her path and strengthen her resolve for the challenges yet to come. The following week brought a mixture of anticipation and unease. The waitress returned to her regular life at the restaurant, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. Patrons greeted her with polite smiles, but she noticed a subtle curiosity in their eyes, a silent question about her talent and the story of the previous week. Her co-workers whispered quietly among themselves, sharing their excitement and awe about what had happened. She felt both pride and discomfort. She wanted to be recognized, yet the attention made her nervous, and she wondered if she had been ready for the scrutiny that came with it. As she moved through the restaurant, performing her usual duties, she replayed the events in her mind. The intensity of the billionaire's gaze, the pressure of performing under expectation, and the triumph of finishing a piece that had silenced the room all mingled into a whirlwind of emotions. She had learned to play through nerves before, but this was different. The stakes felt higher, and the audience was more formidable. Each note she had played had carried weight, and the echo of that weight lingered in her thoughts. Later that evening, a formal invitation arrived, delivered personally by an assistant. The billionaire requested another performance, this time at a private gathering with a small, influential audience. She read the note carefully, feeling her pulse quicken. The opportunity was extraordinary, but so was the pressure. She thought of the expectations she would face, the intense scrutiny of her music and her composure. Self-doubt crept in, whispering questions she had learned to silence over the years. Was she truly ready? Could she meet the challenge without faltering? Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. She spent the next few days preparing, practicing tirelessly at her small apartment. Her fingers traced familiar keys, repeating scales, experimenting with melodies, and refining a piece that could leave a lasting impression. She reflected on her journey, the sacrifices she had made, the countless nights of practice, and the moments when she had doubted herself but pressed on. These reflections strengthened her resolve, reminding her that her talent had been forged through persistence and dedication, not luck. The night of the private gathering arrived, and she dressed simply yet elegantly, choosing attire that reflected her personality without drawing excessive attention. When she arrived at the venue, a spacious, elegantly decorated room greeted her. The piano was positioned at the center, under a soft spotlight, highlighting its polished surface. The billionaire was already there, standing near a small group of distinguished guests. He greeted her with a nod, his expression calm but with a hint of expectation. The air was charged with anticipation, and she could feel it pressing against her as she approached the piano. She began with a gentle prelude, testing the atmosphere, allowing her fingers to glide over the keys, feeling the familiar comfort of the instrument beneath her touch. The audience listened quietly, their expressions revealing appreciation but also curiosity. The billionaire watched closely, attentive to every detail, observing her posture, her focus, and the subtle nuances in her performance. The pressure was tangible, but she drew strength from the music itself, letting each note anchor her presence in the room. As she continued, she felt a wave of self-doubt. Her hands shook slightly, and she hesitated momentarily before continuing a passage she had practiced countless times. The fear of failure threatened to disrupt the flow, but she reminded herself of the journey that had led her here. She had faced uncertainty and expectation before, and she had learned to overcome them. With a deep breath, she let go of the fear, letting her emotions guide her fingers and trusting the skill she had cultivated through years of dedication. Her music began to take on a life of its own. Each chord resonated with emotion, carrying the story of her struggles, her triumphs, and her dreams. The room seemed to respond, the energy shifting as listeners became immersed in the melodies. The billionaire's expression softened, a faint smile crossing his face as he recognized the depth of her talent. The other guests leaned in, captivated by the performance, their attention fully captured by the unfolding narrative. Halfway through, a more challenging section of the piece arrived. She had been nervous about this part, fearing that mistakes might break the spell she had created. Her fingers moved deliberately, focusing on precision while maintaining the emotion that defined her playing. She felt the weight of expectation, yet she embraced it as a force that propelled her forward rather than holding her back. The music flowed seamlessly, blending technical skill with heartfelt expression, and she sensed the audience's growing admiration. By the time she reached the climax of the piece, she was fully absorbed in the performance. The piano became an extension of herself, translating her innermost feelings into sound. The tension and anticipation in the room heightened, as every note resonated with clarity and purpose. She felt a sense of liberation, the music allowing her to release emotions she had long kept hidden. The audience was silent, fully immersed in the experience, and she realized that her talent had the power to move people in ways words never could. When the final note faded, the room remained still for a moment, as if suspended in time. The silence was profound, filled with the weight of shared appreciation and awe. She lowered her hands slowly, feeling the mix of exhaustion and exhilaration that came with giving her all. The billionaire stepped forward, nodding in acknowledgement, his eyes reflecting respect and admiration. It was a quiet moment, but it carried immense significance. For her, it was proof that she had not only survived the pressure, but had transformed it into a meaningful, resonant performance. The guests began to murmur, offering compliments and expressing curiosity about her background and training. She responded with humility, highlighting her dedication and passion rather than seeking attention. The atmosphere shifted from formal expectation to a sense of shared experience and recognition. She felt a quiet pride, not from the praise itself, but from having held her own under scrutiny, remaining true to her art and expressing her authentic self. After the event, she returned home, her thoughts filled with reflection. The experience had been intense, challenging her in ways she had not anticipated, yet it had also reinforced her belief in her abilities. She thought about the future, considering the opportunities that might emerge, but she also recognized the importance of staying grounded. Her journey as a pianist was ongoing, and each performance, each challenge, was part of a larger path that required persistence, focus, and self-belief. That night, she played quietly at her own piano, experimenting with new melodies and reflecting on the lessons of the day. The keys were familiar, comforting, and empowering. She allowed herself to make mistakes, to explore, and to express freely without the weight of expectation. In this private moment, she felt a renewed connection to her music, a reaffirmation of why she had chosen this path despite the difficulties. The experience of performing under pressure had shown her not only the strength of her talent but also the resilience of her spirit. Over the next few days, she noticed subtle changes in herself. Confidence grew steadily, tempered by humility and awareness of the work that still lay ahead. She approached her duties at the restaurant with a renewed sense of purpose, finding joy in both her interactions with patrons and the moments she could steal at the piano. Each performance, whether for a small group or an influential audience, became an opportunity to deepen her skill, to convey emotion, and to explore the full range of her abilities. She thought often about the billionaire, not with fear or intimidation, but with recognition of the role he had played in pushing her beyond her comfort zone. His presence had been a catalyst, a test of her resilience and talent, and she had emerged stronger and more assured. She understood that her music had the power to transcend expectations and connect with people, and she felt determined to continue developing her craft with dedication and integrity. One evening, as she played softly in the restaurant, she noticed a quiet hush among the diners. The music had become a part of the atmosphere, a gentle current that filled the space with warmth and emotion. She smiled to herself, realizing that she had learned to embrace the pressure, to channel it into her performance, and to find joy in the act of playing. The journey was far from over, but each step forward brought her closer to her dreams, reinforcing the belief that persistence, courage, and authenticity could overcome even the most daunting challenges. The night arrived with a soft rain falling outside, casting shimmering reflections on the city streets. She arrived at the restaurant early, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Tonight was different. She knew the billionaire would be present again, and though she had performed for him before, The thought of meeting his expectations once more created a quiet tension within her. The restaurant was filled with the usual buzz of activity, yet she moved through it with a heightened awareness, each step careful, each gesture deliberate. She settled at the piano in the corner, her fingers hovering above the keys, feeling the familiar weight and texture. The soft lighting highlighted the polished wood, creating a comforting sense of stability. As she played the first few notes, she allowed herself to sink into the music, feeling the emotions of the day, the week, and the journey she had undertaken. Each note carried her story, blending experience, struggle, and hope into a melody that filled the room. The billionaire arrived with quiet confidence, his presence commanding yet composed. He greeted her with a nod, acknowledging her with a subtle intensity that both encouraged and tested her. She felt a shiver run through her, not from fear but from the weight of recognition and expectation. The staff and diners noticed the tension, whispering quietly and stealing glances at the small piano corner where she sat. Despite this, she focused on the music, letting the keys guide her and the melody flow naturally. The first piece she played was gentle and introspective, a song that conveyed vulnerability and reflection. She felt the audience's attention settling on her, their collective gaze adding pressure, yet also a strange sense of purpose. Each note resonated with her determination to meet the challenge, to express herself fully, and to maintain control over the room through her art. The music became her anchor, stabilizing her amidst the swirling energy of expectation. As she continued, the billionaire's attention remained fixed, his posture calm, yet there was a subtle intensity in his eyes. She had noticed this before, but tonight it felt different. He was not just listening. He was measuring, evaluating, and perhaps challenging her to rise beyond the previous performances. She felt the pressure, but instead of letting it paralyze her, she channeled it into focus and precision, letting each note carry weight and emotion. Gradually, she moved into a more complex piece, one that she had practiced for this exact moment. Her fingers danced over the keys with confidence, blending technical skill with heartfelt expression. The room seemed to breathe with her music, diners and staff alike drawn into the unfolding performance. Each chord was deliberate, each pause intentional, creating a narrative that spoke of resilience, dedication, and the beauty of perseverance. The music became a bridge between her inner world and the audience, conveying emotions that words could not capture. As the piece progressed, she felt a familiar wave of self-doubt creeping in. It was natural, she reminded herself, part of the challenge that made the performance meaningful. Her hands trembled slightly, and her mind raced with thoughts of potential mistakes or missed notes. But she took a deep breath, letting go of fear, and allowed the emotions behind the music to guide her. She realized that true artistry was not about perfection but about authenticity, and that understanding gave her a renewed sense of confidence. The audience, including the billionaire, responded instinctively, heads tilted, eyes softened, and even the murmuring of the restaurant faded into silence. There was a collective immersion in the music, a shared recognition of her skill and the story she conveyed through the piano. The billionaire's expression softened, revealing a subtle admiration and respect that reinforced her belief in the power of her talent. This acknowledgement, quiet but profound, strengthened her resolve to continue playing with full intention and passion. Reaching the climax of the piece, she poured every ounce of emotion into her performance. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, guided by experience and instinct. The room seemed to expand, filled with the resonance of the piano and the depth of her expression. She felt liberated, fully present in the moment, aware that her music had created a connection that transcended words. The audience was captivated, held in rapt attention by the story unfolding from the keys. As the final notes approached, she allowed herself to savor the journey, the arc of the performance, and the culmination of effort and emotion. Each key she pressed carried intention, each chord was a statement of her dedication, and each pause allowed the audience to absorb the depth of her expression. When the final note lingered and faded into silence, the room remained still, as if collectively holding its breath. She lowered her hands slowly, feeling a wave of exhaustion mingled with exhilaration. The billionaire rose, stepping forward to acknowledge her performance. His nod and faint smile were understated but carried immense significance. For her, it was a validation of talent, perseverance, and authenticity. She realized that this moment was not about approval alone but about mutual recognition of effort, skill, and the courage to express oneself fully. The other diners and staff began to offer quiet applause and murmurs of admiration, but it was the genuine acknowledgement from the man who had tested her that resonated most deeply. Afterward, she engaged in brief conversations with the guests, sharing insights into her musical journey and expressing gratitude for their attention. She remained humble, emphasizing her dedication and love for music rather than seeking personal acclaim. The atmosphere, once charged with expectation and tension, softened into shared appreciation and respect. She felt a quiet pride, grounded not in external validation alone, but in the fulfillment of meeting a challenge and expressing herself authentically. As the evening concluded, she packed her music and prepared to leave, reflecting on the lessons of the night. She had faced intense scrutiny, navigated pressure, and embraced the vulnerability of performance, emerging with confidence and a renewed sense of purpose. The experience had strengthened her belief in her abilities, reaffirming the power of dedication, resilience, and authenticity. She walked home through the soft rain, feeling a calm sense of accomplishment and anticipation for the journey ahead. Returning to her small apartment, she sat at her personal piano, letting her fingers explore new melodies and ideas. The music was freeing, a reminder of why she had chosen this path despite challenges and uncertainty. She played not for an audience, not for recognition, but for herself, allowing the emotional release to carry her through the quiet night. Each note, each chord was a reaffirmation of her love for music and the journey she had undertaken. In the days that followed, subtle changes in her demeanor became apparent. Her confidence grew steadily, tempered by humility and self-awareness. She approached her work at the restaurant with renewed purpose, finding joy in both serving customers and engaging with the piano. Every performance, whether for a small group or an influential audience, became an opportunity to refine her skills, convey emotion, and strengthen her connection to the art form she cherished. She reflected often on the Billionaire, understanding the role he had played as a catalyst for growth. His presence had challenged her, demanded focus and resilience, and pushed her beyond her comfort zone. She appreciated the opportunity, recognizing that influence and power, when approached wisely, could open doors and provide a platform for her talent without diminishing her autonomy. The experience reinforced her commitment to authenticity, reminding her that true artistry required courage, dedication, and the willingness to embrace challenges fully. As she continued to play, both in public and in private, she became more attuned to the impact of her music on others. Each performance carried intention, emotion, and connection, bridging gaps between her inner world and the audience. She found strength in vulnerability, discovering that sharing her passion could inspire admiration and respect while remaining true to herself. Her journey was far from over, but each step forward brought clarity, growth, and a deeper appreciation for the power of her talent. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, that opportunities would bring pressure, and that each performance would demand focus, skill, and authenticity. Yet she also knew that she had the resilience, passion, and determination to navigate these experiences successfully. The lessons of the night, the intensity of performance, and the acknowledgement of her talent had become a guiding force, shaping her path and strengthening her resolve. Through each note played and each melody explored, she embraced the journey of growth and self-discovery. The piano remained both a refuge and a stage, a place to express, connect, and evolve. The experience with the Billionaire, the high-stakes performances, and the recognition of her abilities had ignited a deeper commitment to her art. She understood that her journey as a pianist was ongoing, and that every challenge, every audience, and every opportunity would contribute to her growth and fulfillment. With each passing day, she approached her music with renewed vigor and mindfulness. She played with intention, exploring the depth of her abilities and the nuances of emotion that could be conveyed through sound. The piano became a canvas for self-expression, a medium through which she could share her story and inspire connection. In this way, she embraced the transformative power of music, finding meaning, purpose, and joy in each performance, and looking forward to the future with confidence and hope. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet anticipation that seemed to follow her everywhere she went. Every time she entered the restaurant, she felt the echo of previous performances, the weight of expectation mingling with the memory of applause and recognition. She continued her work with dedication, taking orders, serving customers, and balancing the demands of the kitchen. But there was a new lightness in her step. She had discovered something profound in the past weeks: the power of her music and the strength she carried when she trusted herself. One evening, the restaurant was busier than usual. A small gathering had been organized, including several patrons who had heard of her talent. The atmosphere was lively but calm, the kind that made her focus easier as she approached the piano. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the familiar texture and weight, letting the nerves settle with the first gentle notes. The music began quietly, weaving through the chatter, slowly drawing attention and softening the room into a receptive audience. The billionaire arrived quietly, without fanfare, observing from a distance. His presence was steady and calm, and she felt no pressure from him this time, only a subtle acknowledgement that he was watching and listening. That simple recognition, without any added demand, brought a sense of peace. She realized that she had grown in confidence since the first time they had met. The music now flowed naturally, guided by her emotions and experience rather than fear of judgment. Each note carried authenticity, and each chord resonated with clarity and strength. As she moved into more complex passages, her fingers glided across the keys with ease. She had learned to balance technical precision with emotional depth, creating music that was both powerful and delicate. The audience responded intuitively, leaning in, closing their eyes, and letting the melodies wash over them. The restaurant, filled with diners and staff, seemed to exist only within the music. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a voice, a storyteller, a channel for her experiences, hopes, and dreams. The billionaire's gaze followed every movement, but instead of causing tension, it reinforced her determination. She remembered the first night when his attention had been both a challenge and a test. Now, she embraced it as an opportunity to express herself fully, without fear or hesitation. The confidence that had been building over weeks of practice and prior performances allowed her to explore new depths in her music, playing with subtlety, emotion, and control. Midway through, she closed her eyes, letting memory and emotion guide her hands. The piece she played was one she had composed herself, a melody that carried her struggles, her perseverance, and the joy she found in her craft. Each note told a story of dedication, each pause invited reflection, and each chord connected her with everyone in the room. The silence of attentive listeners amplified the impact of her music, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that her talent could create such a response. Time seemed to stretch as she played, each measure a journey through her experiences and emotions. She reflected on the challenges she had faced, the long nights practicing alone, the moments of self-doubt, and the courage required to perform under scrutiny. These memories, once sources of tension, had now become fuel for her expression. The music was a living embodiment of her journey, and she allowed it to guide her fully, immersing herself in the sound, rhythm, and story. When she reached the crescendo of the piece, her hands moved with purpose and grace. Every note was deliberate, every chord precise yet infused with emotion. The audience leaned forward instinctively, drawn into the intensity of the moment. Even the billionaire, who had been so commanding and expectant before, now seemed captivated, quietly absorbing the beauty and depth of her performance. The piano became a bridge, connecting her inner world with those who listened, creating a shared experience of wonder and admiration. As the final notes lingered and faded, the room remained silent for a moment, as if holding its breath. Then, slowly, the sound of quiet applause and whispers of appreciation filled the space. She lowered her hands from the keys, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and contentment. The performance had been complete, not just technically but emotionally, and she felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond recognition or praise. The billionaire approached, nodding with a subtle smile. There was no need for words. His acknowledgement alone carried meaning. He had seen her grow, witnessed her talent, and respected the way she had expressed herself through music. That quiet affirmation, combined with her own sense of achievement, was more meaningful than any external reward. She realized that her journey had been as much about self-discovery as it had been about performing for others. The following days brought reflection and calm. She continued her duties at the restaurant, but now she carried herself with a quiet confidence that was visible to everyone around her. She played the piano for patrons as before, but the music had a new depth, a resonance that reflected her experiences and growth. Diners noticed the difference, often pausing to listen, drawn into the melodies that filled the room. She had learned to perform not just for attention or approval but for connection and expression, and that made all the difference. She also found time to compose, experimenting with new melodies and harmonies. The piano at her apartment became a sanctuary, a place to explore her creativity freely. Each session was a blend of reflection, experimentation, and emotional expression. She wrote pieces inspired by the challenges she had overcome, the encouragement she had received, and the emotions she had experienced through her performances. This creative process strengthened her skills and deepened her understanding of music as a means of personal expression. Occasionally, she received subtle invitations to perform at private events or for small gatherings. She approached each opportunity with thoughtfulness, choosing engagements that allowed her to express herself authentically and connect meaningfully with the audience. The experiences were different from the high-pressure encounters with the billionaire, yet she approached them with the same dedication and care. Each performance reinforced her confidence and expanded her sense of possibility. Her personal life also changed subtly. Friends and colleagues noticed her growing poise and self-assurance. She became more willing to take risks, both in music and in daily life, guided by the lessons she had learned about resilience, focus, and authenticity. The challenges she had faced and overcome had shaped her, giving her tools to navigate uncertainty with grace and determination. The music had become a mirror of her growth, reflecting both her inner journey and the connections she formed with others through performance. She reflected often on the influence of the billionaire, understanding that his presence had served as both challenge and catalyst. He had created an environment that demanded her best, yet she had transformed that pressure into motivation and growth. She felt gratitude for the experience, not for the attention or recognition, but for the opportunity to discover her own strength and the power of her talent. The experience had taught her that challenges could be transformed into opportunities when met with focus, dedication, and authenticity. As months passed, she continued to grow as a pianist, performer, and individual. Her skill became more refined, her emotional expression more nuanced, and her confidence more solid. She understood that each step, each performance, and each challenge contributed to her journey, shaping her into the artist she aspired to be. The piano remained a constant companion, a medium through which she could explore her emotions, share her story, and connect with others. One evening, she played a new composition for a small audience, her fingers moving with fluidity and grace. The music carried layers of emotion, telling a story of struggle, perseverance, and triumph. She glanced at the audience, noticing their rapt attention, and felt a quiet satisfaction. The journey had been long, filled with challenges, growth, and discovery. But in that moment, she realized how far she had come. The power of her music, the depth of her expression, and the connections she created through performance affirmed the path she had chosen. As the final note faded, the audience remained silent briefly, absorbing the resonance of the performance. Then, slowly, applause and appreciation filled the room. She lowered her hands from the keys, feeling a sense of completeness and joy. The performance had been a culmination of lessons learned, confidence earned, and authenticity embraced. She smiled quietly to herself, understanding that her journey was ongoing, filled with opportunities to grow, inspire, and express herself through music. That night, she returned home and sat at her piano, allowing her fingers to explore freely. The melodies flowed effortlessly, guided by experience, emotion, and imagination. She played not for an audience, not for approval, but for the sheer joy of creating and expressing. Each note was a testament to her journey, a reflection of her growth, and a celebration of her talent. She understood that the music would continue to guide her, inspire her, and connect her with the world around her. In the quiet of her apartment, she reflected on the lessons of the past months. She had faced pressure, scrutiny, and high expectations, yet she had emerged stronger, more confident, and more attuned to her own abilities. The journey had taught her the importance of resilience, focus, authenticity, and dedication. She realized that the music was not just a skill but a mirror of her inner strength, a medium through which she could explore her emotions and touch the lives of others. Her path as a pianist was far from over, but she now approached it with clarity, confidence, and purpose. Each performance, whether small or grand, was an opportunity to share her story, convey emotion, and connect with the audience. She had discovered the power of her own talent, the impact of authenticity, and the joy of expressing herself fully. As she continued to play, compose, and explore, she embraced the journey ahead, ready to face challenges, celebrate successes, and create music that resonated deeply within herself and others.